Welcome to Horror Melee,
a podcast born of a group of people who love to talk and debate horror.
Every episode, one of us picks a movie to review, and the rest of us must either suffer or enjoy that pick.
Turn your brain off and enjoy.
Where, nor of good nor ill, what aim hath act? Without its climax, death, what savour hath life? An impeccable machine, exact. He paces an inane and pointless path to glut brute appetites, his sole content. How tedious were he fit to comprehend himself. More this our noble element of fire in nature, love in spirit, unkenned life hath no spring, no axle, and no end. His body, a bloody ruby radiant with noble passion. Sun-souled Lucifer swept through the dawn colossal, swift aslant on Eden's imbecile perimeter. He blessed non-entity with every curse and spiced with sorrow the dull soul of sense. Breathed life into the sterile universe. With love and knowledge drove out innocence. The key of joy is disobedience.
Welcome to Horror Melee. On this episode, we have Holly.
Hello.
And Patrick.
Hail Satan!
I'm Steph, and we're going to discuss the 1970s cult short, Lucifer Rising. This movie was written and directed by Kenneth Anger. It stars Bobby Beausoleil, Donald Cammell, Miriam Jabril, Leslie Huggins, Marianne Faithfull. The budget, I have no idea. LOL.
Yeah. He sold some pictures. He got some money from the government.
The runtime is 29 minutes, and it took about 14 years to complete because the director, filmmaker, Kenneth Anger, was all over the map.
He's the reason why this movie took that long. Let's be honest.
We're going to get into it, but if you haven't seen this short, go to YouTube, look up Lucifer Rising movie, 1972. There's a high-def version. Watch it again, take some acid, and watch it for a third time, and then come and listen to this podcast.
Yeah. While tripping still.
Yes.
Oh, man. So, yeah, it's a short film with no dialogue. Kenneth Anger says that Lucifer Rising was about Egyptian gods summoning the angel Lucifer in order to usher in a new occult age, in accordance with the principles of OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis.
I tried to say that so many times, and I felt like my tongue was in a fucking knot.
Yeah, because Lucifer was tying that knot. If y'all aren't familiar with the Ordo Templi Orientis, it is an occult founded by Aleister Crowley. Anger was influenced by Aleister Crowley's description of Lucifer as the light-bearing god and was inspired by Crowley's poem, Hymn to Lucifer. We're going to unwrap all of it.
Yeah.
So the making of this movie, I think, is like way more interesting than the movie itself.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Like, this movie is an occult movie. It stars occult people. There's so many cults involved in this movie, in the making of it. It's unbelievable.
It is. It's just like a spider web of like occultism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost a little like love letter to Crowley. That's how I kind of interpret it. I felt like he was so enthralled and like loved him so much that this was kind of a little nod to him.
Oh, yeah. I'm not a film buff person, but I mean, obviously I have never heard of Kenneth Anger, and I was looking for an occult film to watch for this podcast, and I came across a website with a bunch of films listed, and this one was listed. It was a short, so I was like, oh, that'd be cool if, like, we talked about a short. But then once I looked it up and started reading about it, I thought to myself, hells yeah, we got to talk about this because this is like insane.
Yeah.
So Kenneth Anger was born and raised in LA in 1927. He was a child actor dancing on stage with Shirley Temple. As a teenager, he began making his own films using the family's movie camera, and he was inspired by European art house films.
Yeah, you can definitely tell.
Yeah. One of his films that I haven't seen, but probably most people have heard of, is Scorpio Rising. He did that in 1963. Have either of you heard of Kenneth Anger?
No.
No, not at all. Which is weird because in high school I went through this like art house phase, like any angsty teen does, and I did a lot of research on like a lot of the older European kind of art scene, a lot of Germanic, Swedish, Norwegian, kind of Northern Europe, and his name never popped up once, which kind of blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in my, I've always been quite fascinated by like cults of the 60s and 70s and like the Manson family and everything. So I'm surprised in all of I even read part of Helter Skelter. So I'm surprised that like names didn't register with me as I was watching this. But, you know, in all of that reading as I was learning about this, like I didn't, you know, somehow come across this.
Yeah, right? I don't know how this isn't passed around more. I know it's not like a horror movie, but I can't believe I haven't seen this movie on more lists, just being like weird movies everybody should watch.
Yeah.
If I found this in high school, because I grew up in a religious house, and by like age 12, I was like, oh, I'm fucking out. I would have been playing this constantly in my room. Constantly. I'm very upset it took me this long to like sit down and watch this.
Mm-hmm. So Kenneth Anger, God, there's just so much about him. I'm not even going to go into like him as like a director or his history or anything like that, because y'all need to just look him up, read interviews. There's like a book about him.
We could do 5 episodes just on him.
Yeah, right.
If you want to know about his personal life, go look it up.
Yeah. When Kenneth started making this movie, he was living in San Francisco, and the inspiration was originally like a documentary on the counterculture movement and the hippies and the young teens of the 60s. So he's in San Francisco. He's already a filmmaker. He's doing all the like artsy 60s stuff, and he meets Bobby Beausoleil. He wanted Bobby Beausoleil to play Lucifer because he had this, you know, going back to his idea as Lucifer as a rebel angel, not Satan. And Holly, who is Bobby Beausoleil?
Oh, well, who is he?
Hey, Bobby.
He was in with the Manson family, and Gary Hinman had possibly owed money to the Manson family, and Bobby Beausoleil, along with 2 women from the Manson family, they killed Gary Hinman, and that was kind of the spawn of the whole Helter Skelter. And if anybody has read Helter Skelter, they talk about this murder, and like Political Piggy was written all over the walls. They were trying to start a race war and, you know, get all that going. So this was kind of the catalyst, and this took place before the Tate LaBianca murders.
There's a lot of spooky, culty magic with a K surrounding this film. Some of the scenes that they filmed were at Anthony LaVey's Church of Satan, which was started in like 1966, and a dilapidated building known as the Russian Embassy, which is where Kenneth Anger lived.
Did you guys do any research on the Russian Embassy building?
No.
They never mention anything on why it's called the Russian Embassy building besides it's just called the Russian Embassy.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love it.
It's like an ornate building, and my guess is like, oh, it's ornate. It's like Russian.
That's something I would like call my apartment or something. Yeah, come over to the Russian Embassy.
Yeah.
I think it's so funny that Kenneth Anger, Anger isn't really his last name, but that's like his stage name, because this entire film is riddled with like fights and spouts and like people who were gonna play Lucifer, they're not playing Lucifer, all sorts of stuff. So naturally, Bobby and Anger have a few fights, including Anger accusing Bobby of stealing the footage and equipment. So ultimately, Bobby leaves Anger and ends up in the Manson cult.
As you do.
Didn't he give him like $700 and then he just took that money and bought weed with it? He like loaned him $700 and then he just bought weed, and that was another reason just like throwing it over the top. Which I saw reading about Kenneth Anger, there's kind of a trend of him not really liking drugs, which was surprising to me.
Right?
There's all sorts of stories and allegedly things, things happened. And, I read that, one of the fights that Bobby and Anger had is they tried to do some event and had technical difficulties because Kenneth was on LSD and, things fell apart. So who knows? But then, you read other interviews where Kenneth Anger is like, drugs are crutches. You don't need drugs.
Yeah. Whenever he's talking about like those drugs are crutches, he's always talking about like heroin and weed. Maybe LSD was just his thing and he just hated heroin and weed.
So part of Lucifer Rising has been filmed. Bobby breaks off his working friendship situation with Anger. He ends up in the Manson cult, and now he's in prison for the rest of his life. I think I even read somewhere that like his car broke down in front of the Spawn Ranch.
That's literally how he got into it.
There's a podcast. The host interviews a huge Kenneth Anger fan and filmmaker. We'll include the link, and you can listen to that podcast because this guy talks about how Kenneth Anger would put hexes on people and how throughout this entire like making the film, editing it, and even showing it, people died coming into contact or like bad things happened because apparently Kenneth Anger put like hexes on people.
Yeah. I'm a type of person, like, I don't believe something until I see it. Mm-hmm. This kind of stuff I really want to believe. It still has so much to do with other religion. I don't believe it. So, like, when someone's like, oh, I put a hex on you, I guess it's just a form of chaos magic. That is kind of cool. But if it comes down to, like, demons and stuff, that's hard for me to grasp. It's like I want to believe, but I don't have proof. That's where my Scully comes in. I need the proof. I need the substance.
This is just a very random little side note. There's a difference between like a jinx and a hex.
Ooh.
Yeah, just a little something. So a jinx is like, think of when you say something as something at the same time as somebody and you're like, jinx, you owe me a Coke. Like, that's the thing. It's like a frustration for the other person. It's like, nothing major. Hex is more of like harming something, not doing direct damage to somebody. Like, you can't like kill somebody, but yeah, something bad's going to happen to you.
Yeah. It's like indirect hurting somebody.
Yes. Yeah.
Do hexes have any involvement with like any type of chaos magic and stuff like that? Can you involve that with hexes?
Yeah.
I don't know much about some of the right hand and left hand magic, but I do know a little. My understanding is like chaos magic can get you where you want, but it also can cause chaos in your life.
Yes.
And just downward spirals and stuff like this. So him doing these little hexes on these people, is this some type of power coming in and stopping this film from like coming out when it needs to, like pushing it back and back and back because he's just putting his own frustrations and stuff into these hexes, which then bleeds into his own work?
Yeah, I could absolutely justify that because, yeah, it's like, the rule of three in paganism. Yep. Whatever you give out, it comes threefold back to you.
Which is funny because he does multiple hexes during this shoot. And if you're saying rule of three, I can only think of two that he did, so I don't know if there's... Is the rule of three kind of like the deaths, too? Like, 3 people die? Does that have to do anything with the rule of three?
It's just a huge pyramid scheme.
Oh.
And there's so many pyramids in this movie.
What else? Thalima's logo? Bunch of triangles, pyramids. Everything has to do with fucking triangles.
Yep. Back to this movie. Anger is in San Francisco. Bobby Beausoleil left. He's like, fuck this. I'm moving to London. All right. And he's going to restart filming with more of an Aleister Crowley inspo. So Anger's in London and he's like a cool dude. So of course he like makes friends with the Rolling Stones and he tries to get Mick Jagger to be the new Lucifer. But Mick is like, no thanks. Here's my brother, Chris Jagger. And he also offers to do, I'm getting ahead of myself, but he also offered to do the soundtrack, but then fucking like Ultimate happened. So the Rolling Stones were like, no thanks, but no thanks.
It's weird with Anger. I feel like he makes all these friends and he only sticks around and they don't really like him that much.
Yeah.
But he just hangs around. It's like one of those people you meet in the beginning and you're like, oh, this person's fucking cool. I really like this person. And it's like the fourth hang, you're like, oh, fuck. Get out of my life.
I know, right? You're just like, you start itching and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, what's wrong? Something's weird.
And then there's that one person in the group's like, no, they're cool. Keep them in. Let them come on over.
Oh, just give him a chance.
Yeah. As he's over there walking in circles and chanting.
So Anger takes whatever footage is left from the States that he filmed in San Francisco, whatever footage like wasn't quote unquote stolen. And he creates this short called Invocation of My Demon Brother. It sounds like Kenneth is just like networking, schmoozing, still trying to work on his film, still being in the like hoo-hoo scene. It's like the 1960s. It's in London. There's some info from Wikipedia that I have to share that to attract press attention, Anger arranged a photo shoot at his basement flat in which a number of other film directors were in attendance. Among them, one of the actors from the movie, Dennis Hopper and Alejandro Jodorowsky. I don't know if any of y'all have ever watched El Topo.
Yes.
No.
I have. So it's funny, when I first watched Lucifer Rising, I was like, this reminds me of The Holy Mountain, which is Alexander Jodorowsky's film. It's very religious and fucking weird, not a lot of dialogue. It's one of those movies you watch like on edibles or some I would not want to watch this on LSD. But that's in the same vein of Lucifer Rising, so it's funny because I didn't know about what you just talked about, like how he had this little photo shoot and then he came in, and it makes sense that they were all hanging out together because they're all filming very similar things.
Yeah, right? So this whole like photo shoot, press attention, he showed some of his footage and he used it to convince the National Film Finance Corporation to provide him with £15,000 to complete the rest of the film. Okay, £15,000 in like 1968. I don't know what that equates to today, but it allowed him to get a crew, get Marianne Faithfull and some other folks, and fly them to Egypt and Germany to continue filming the film.
That's pretty awesome.
Wow.
Kenneth Anger knew how to network and schmooze and hustle.
Man, he and Peter Jackson should have gotten together.
Wow, so 100 pounds in 1968 equivalent to today is 1,700 pounds.
Don't make me do math right now.
No, so that's a pretty good amount of money.
Yeah, they went to Egypt, and Anger comments that he had to use a bit of deception to film in Egypt. He told them that they were doing a documentary on ancient Egypt beliefs and needed to film in the actual settings, like in front of the Sphinx at Kamak along the Nile, where you see the beautiful ruined temples. And the authorities fell for it.
What? Man.
What?
I can't get into a club for free. What the fuck? I could not talk to someone and be like, oh, you just let us film here, it'd be really cool. I don't have that power. Once again, chaos magic. There's him once again.
Seriously. So they do their filming in like Egypt and Germany. Kenneth is back in like the UK, and he is at an auction where people were bidding on some Crowley memorabilia, and he meets Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin.
Of course.
And Anger is like hanging out with Jimmy Page, asks him like, hey, do this soundtrack. I'm making a movie. It's in honor of Aleister Crowley. Obvi, we both like him. Let's hang out. So Page is a huge Crowley fan, and I'm pretty sure that he bought Aleister Crowley's house in Inverness.
And in the Loch Ness, yeah.
Yeah.
You can watch a version of this movie with his soundtrack, and I imagine he probably wrote and recorded some of that in that house.
Yeah.
Which is fucking cool as shit.
Yeah.
Kenneth Anger keeps filming in London. Jimmy Page is working on the soundtrack, and allegedly, Jimmy created a soundtrack not like wailing on the guitar, and Kenneth wasn't into that. He also only made like 20 minutes of a soundtrack, but Jimmy Page like used a bunch of different instruments and a lot of ceremonial Egyptian like old school instruments and bells and bowls, and
it was very atmospheric.
Very atmospheric. You can easily find the Jimmy Page version or just listen to the Jimmy Page soundtrack on YouTube.
Yeah, the music is really fucking cool. When I watched it, it didn't have the punch of the original soundtrack.
So before we get to the original soundtrack, Anger naturally was like, I don't like this. They had him and Jimmy like had a rift, had an argument. So Jimmy was like kicked out of the soundtrack game.
Was Kenneth staying at their house?
Allegedly, yes. And the story is that Kenneth was having parties, being like, look at me, I'm at Jimmy Page's house, we're getting spooky. Jimmy Page was in Led Zeppelin, so he's like on tour making albums and living the life. I read something where it's like after an argument between Page, Charlotte, Page's wife, and Kenneth Anger, Jimmy was removed from the production of the soundtrack.
Man.
Who knows exactly what happened.
Once again, I'm going to blame Kenneth.
Mr. Anger.
Yeah. Reading some interviews with him, you could tell he's a prick. Like, I'm sure he'd be okay to talk to, but at the end of the day, he'd be like, yeah, he's cool, he's an interesting guy, and it was really cool, but yeah, he's kind of douchey. I mean, I would love to meet him still. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, he's still alive, and he is in his 90s.
That's pure magic. That's the only thing keeping him holding him together right now.
It's pure anger fueling him.
He's surviving solely on anger. Okay, so going back to the soundtrack, full circle, who ends up doing the soundtrack but Bobby fucking Beausoleil in prison, right? So
amazing.
Okay, apparently, who knows how this happened, but Bobby Beausoleil found out that Jimmy Page was no longer doing the soundtrack. In my mind, I'm reading this and I'm like, Bobby Beausoleil contacted Kenneth Anger being like, hey, I heard Jimmy isn't doing the soundtrack. How about you give it to me? I'm going to find some prison inmates who are also musicians and we'll figure out a situation and record the soundtrack here in prison.
How did he find out about that?
That's what I want to know. Like, it's not like Bobby Beausoleil is scrolling Instagram or scrolling Facebook and looking at Kenneth Anger's, like, status updates being like, oh, fuck Jimmy. Jimmy Page is an asshole. Now I need a soundtrack.
Yeah.
First of all, this isn't like world-breaking news. This is like counterculture, underground news. And yet Bobby Beausoleil is like keeping tabs on what his Booski Kenneth Anger is up to. I have no idea. I have no clue. Maybe like he had a dream. Maybe like some hex that like Kenneth put on Bobby Beausoleil, he just connected through like brainwaves. I don't know.
It's fucking mental.
Anyway, so Bobby Beausoleil gets a band together, gets 12 other like murderers who used to be musicians, and their band is called the Freedom Orchestra.
Oh my God.
What a lame name.
Right? For who makes up the Freedom Orchestra, I'm very disappointed in this name choice.
Yeah, you could have been anything, but you're like, freedom. Yeah.
So Bobby Beausoleil and his Freedom Orchestra makes a fucking soundtrack. Kenneth Anger brings a tape recorder into prison, and, you know, he gets money, gets some instruments, and they record the soundtrack in prison for this movie. Kenneth Anger returns to the States and produces the film. It was released in 1981. There are stories of people going to like an art house showing in the 1974 in Paris and seeing a version of this film. I have no idea when the official release was, but Bobby Beausoleil is like the like official soundtrack to the movie, but there are versions with Jimmy Page's soundtrack. Who knows? I have no idea like the reception of this movie. I have no idea like where I just imagine that Kenneth Anger went to like his usual spots and showed the movie and things ended there.
Since he showed it in 1981, and this movie, like, if you do not have a knowledge of, I don't know, occult and magic and Isis and Osiris and Lilith and just some knowledge of that, you're gonna have no fucking idea what's happening in this movie.
Oh, for
Absolutely.
sure.
I knew
For sure.
bare minimum when I first watched it, and I was fucking lost. And then I did research and then watched it 2 more times, and I'm still fucking a little lost.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll get to the movie. Just to wrap up like the making of this movie. After Kenneth Anger made this movie, apparently he met the dude who shot John Lennon. I don't have the story 100% correct, but apparently like Mark David Chapman saw the movie, went up to Kenneth after watching it being like, hey, good film, and like dropped like 2 bullets in his hand. It's like, this one's for John Lennon or some shit like that. And then Kenneth Anger retires from filmmaking and is like, I'm done. He retires from filmmaking for a very long time, for like decades.
See, I want to believe that because I feel Kenneth Anger is just a being of pure chaos magic, and
Right?
anyone he interacts with, just negative things happen to.
Yeah.
But John, it's hard to believe that because the guy that shot John Lennon was so religious and such a introvert. I can't see him going to a New York arts film. But I would love to believe that happened.
Yeah,
but it's
right?
one of those instances, you know?
Right? Yeah.
Another Anger instance.
It's a good story. Yeah.
But how crazy would it be if Chapman didn't even go see the movie? Anger's just walking down the street and Chapman's like, I need to go give this guy 2 bullets. Well, let's do it.
Yeah.
Because that would also be really fucking cool and creepy.
I wouldn't put it past it. You know, who knows?
No.
Okay, so that's the making of the movie. We've mentioned Aleister Crowley. Patrick, can you tell us a little bit about Aleister Crowley?
Yeah. Edward Alexander Crowley. Or better known as Aleister Crowley, however you guys want to say it. Or the wickedest man in the world. Or master of the occult. He's been known as many things. He was just an occultist, magician, novelist, painter, poet, power bottom. He's mainly known for being the founder of Thelema, which is a type of a religion he founded. I mean, there is so much we could talk about him. Just know he is the godfather of the occult and magic and all this beings. That's all you really need to know for this story when we go talk into the movie. If you want to look up the religion of Thelema, you should. It's pretty cool. There's some inspiring things, some pretty deep things. You can start with the Book of the Law, but I will say it is not an easy read. It's very difficult.
When did he start the religion of Thelema?
Oh, when did he actually start it?
Yeah.
Oh man, in the early 1900s. I mean, he was born in like 1893 or 1883. I mean, he was doing this shit when it would not even have crossed a lot of people's mind. Actually, I don't know, because Europe in the old days, they probably did all this shit. But it's a big founded on Egyptian. Like, the story goes that he was in Egypt with, I think, his wife at the time.
Yeah, his wife.
And she was a conduit of his and of Horus, and that's how the Book of the Law came to be. But, I mean, there's so much.
And that's also why in the film they went to Egypt to film, because they filmed at these, like, quote-unquote magic spots.
Correct. And that's why, you know, you see a lot of the pyramids and there's a lot of triangles, because that's also the symbol for the Thelema religion. It's like this triangle. He's also known for his massive orgies and his massive long rituals. Like, there's some rituals that he did where, you know, took 6 months of preparation and rituals for 12 hours a day. I mean, he's doing rituals constantly. So it's a very heavy ritualistic religion. But then you also have this weird spider web of people connected to this. I mean, like, Kenneth Anger, he is one step away from fucking L. Ron Hubbard.
Yes.
The founder of Scientology, which is absolutely insane.
Can you tell us about that Moonchild ritual?
Oh, yeah. Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, can't remember the lady's name, tried to perform the Moonchild ritual, which is bringing the Antichrist to the world.
Okay, so who is Jack Parsons?
Jack Parsons is he was a NASA scientist, helped create rocket fuel that eventually killed him and blew himself up in his garage, which it's said that after L. Ron Hubbard and the Moonchild ritual failed, L. Ron Hubbard stole his girlfriend, that Jack Parsons was trying to put hexes and curses on L. Ron Hubbard, but fucked it up and affected himself, and that's why he blew up. Allegedly. More allegedly stuff. But also, it's funny, Crowley also didn't ever want to do this ritual because it's like, he felt he was also the only one who could do it, but why bring the end, right? There is this thing I love about Jimmy Page's castle, also Aleister Crowley's old house, that he did this 6-month-long ritual. I don't know the name of the ritual, but at the end of it, it ties into a little bit of the end of the movie, that he opened up, if anyone's Twin Peaks fans, the Black Lodge, and stuff came in, and nothing was ever the same after that. And his life changed dramatically. There's so much we could go, and there's so much. Just do some research.
this whole this whole, you think you're watching a 29-minute short, but you are entering a universe of occultism.
Yeah.
Think about this. There was a rumor going around, but a very strong chance, that Barbara Bush was the daughter of Aleister Crowley. Barbara Bush is the wife of George H. Bush, President of the United States, whose son, George W. Bush, president during 9/11. Chaos magic. Tying it all together. I'm going down this rabbit hole. Pull me out. Pull me out.
Okay, so let's get into the actual movie.
Yes. All 29 minutes of it.
So the movie opens with a fiery volcano and flowing lava. We see the title, Lucifer Rising out of like a beach situation.
Really cool opening, I will say.
It really is, yeah.
For the time, like, really fucking cool.
Oh, but like in the very beginning, like you see like a film by, you know, Kenneth Anger, and what's his logo? It's a fucking triangle with a sphinx and a UFO.
You know what?
It goes deeper, Stephanie.
I swear, I totally would have been in a cult. Like, there's no denying. I absolutely would have been in a cult.
Nowadays, no, I'm good. But 1960, 70? Yeah, most likely.
Yep.
So we cut to Egypt. We see Osiris and Isis. Osiris and Isis are like waving wands in the air, and there's like bubbling lava. We're cutting to scenes of like bubbling lava and mud, and they're just like up and down, waving their hands. Osiris has a pole. Isis has an ankh, and they're just like waving their hands in the air. Holly, any like comments and anything so far?
Yeah, I mean, God, there's so much. There's so much. Okay, so
just dive into it, Holly.
The beginning. All right. There's a lot of, in mythology, a lot of creation myths are very similar. There is some kind of egg or primordial water or something that the earth is born from, and that's why we see that little crocodile hatching from the egg. That's supposed to be the cosmic egg. It's like a womb, you know, it's like where all the water that we're born in lives and everything, and we come from that. And a lot of the myths say that some kind of disturbance, vibration is what brings forth the birth of creation. So Osiris and Isis, their Ankh is also known as the key of life. The crosses, I forget which is which, but it stands for life, love, and then the oval circle, it's reincarnation. That's what Isis has. So it's very much the great rite, like where they're bringing forth the birth of Horus, which is also seen as Lucifer, which Lucifer not being a parallel to Satan, Lucifer is seen as a guiding light. And so I went into this whole Catholic rabbit hole. So Lucifer in an older context means light bringer, and is also the Latin name for the planet Venus. And Venus, as we know now, is the brightest planet. You know, bright light, it brings light, and you don't always see Venus. It like comes and goes. The mythology surrounding that planet, that bright light in essence, it's seen as falling from the heavens to the earth or to the underworld. So that's why there's myths about like with Lucifer. Like it's equated that Lucifer fell from heaven to the underworld, to hell, if you're Catholic. And it's that bright light. It's like it disappears. Where'd it go? Must have gone to the underworld, you know, as one does.
As one does, yeah.
So, yeah. So in the Hebrew Bible, when it was translated to the King James Version, Lucifer became synonymous with Satan, and that was only because of translation. It wasn't, you know, like, oh no, this is how it should be. It just got translated weird, and so that's why.
Wow.
Yeah, yes, because most interpretations see the name Lucifer meaning morning star or shining one. It's not a proper name, Lucifer. I think it may have, I forgot to double check, but I believe I even saw this passage in the movie at some point. But in the Bible passage, Isaiah 14:12, in the King James Version, it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" And then in the Christian Standard Bible version, it says, "Shining morning star, how you have fallen from the heavens, you destroyer of nations, you have been cut down to the ground." So it's basically the same thing. It's just taking out the name Lucifer. It's the exact same thing. It's just not using Lucifer, because in the Christian Standard Bible, Lucifer would have been a proper noun, meaning synonymous with Satan. I'm really curious how did Lucifer get tied in with Satan? And I find it very interesting that Venus is the only planet named after a woman, and the connections with women and Eve, and like bringing forth original sin, and like women being evil, having some kind of evil in them. Like I'm wondering if that had something to do with making Lucifer synonymous with Satan.
Ooh. Yeah. Also really interesting because Venus is the planet of love and partnerships and relationships. To associate that with Lucifer is also really interesting.
Right.
What's with the deal with, you said Lilith represents night, and then you have, in Greek, Nyx, who's a woman, represents night or darkness or the abyss, and then in Norse, Hela also represents the underworld and darkness. Like, what's the deal with women representing night.
I don't know the associations exactly with women and night, but with Horus, the Eye of Horus, I'm going to take this from a book that I have. This is a little passage that I'm going to read. As a sky god, Horus took the form of a falcon whose right eye was the sun and whose left eye was the moon. During a terrible combat, Horus wounded Seth in the testicles, and Seth damaged one or both of the eyes of Horus. In my head, it was like Lilith represents that other side of, like, you have Horus synonymous with Lucifer in this context. And so Lilith is representing that opposite side. I didn't see exactly where they fit together or exactly how that was going, but it was like she seemed like the opposite side of Lucifer.
And, you know, we live in a patriarchal society and they just want to like shit on women and keep them in the darkness.
That is also true. Absolutely.
Yeah, you can't deny that, especially during these times when this was written.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next scene. Then we see a person in a Technicolor coat with like all the triangles on it and some eyes. This person in a Technicolor coat rises from like a red satin sheet bed with Knights of Templar logo on it. He checks out the LA sunset. He pulls out a green wand. He taps a falcon and then he goes to a chair, flings like this sheet off of the chair, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I
It's
know.
like Rocky Horror.
That's so funny you thought that. I thought I was like, hey, you got distance on that.
I know.
Okay.
And everything is so slow right now that all of us, you know, when you see this person like whip the sheet off of this chair, it's just like, okay, all right, get it.
Yeah, every movement at this point is very precise and has some type of meaning to it. And then that happens.
He sits in the chair. All of a sudden, he's like in a new wardrobe where he's naked in a red toga. And then he grabs a spear. He's covered in blood all of a sudden. And then he like takes a bath. And meanwhile, there's like images of like a person sailing.
You know, if I was ever covered in blood, a bath is probably something I wouldn't take because then you're just in the blood still. Unless it's part of the ritual, then maybe. But I feel like a shower is a much better situation for that.
But I love that, like, as he's going into the bath, there's like a huge mirror with like Bass or something, like a beer brand on it.
I know. It was the only thing that felt really out of place in the entire movie.
This movie was made in the 70s. There's like temporary images. There's old images. There's like old Egyptian images. So it's all over the map.
Yeah, there's mixing of so many different types of religion in this too.
Yeah. So then we cut to like this gray lady who's in a gray head wrap, gray face paint, a gray flowy dress, and she rises out of like a rock coffin. She starts to take a nature walk, and bada bing babadook, she's in Egypt. And then she has like her arms out open, and then it cuts to scenes of the first dude, you know, in his Technicolor coat. And then we see a scene of Stonehenge, and then Marian Faithfull graces the screen. Apparently, Marian Faithfull plays Lilith. I have no idea in what context, but she's here playing Lilith. So Lilith is on a nature walk as well, and she's walking up some rock structure, and there's a bridge, and this scene is intermixed with nighttime scenes of lanterns going up the same structure. Lilith, like everybody else, stretches her arms out at the top and freezes to a scene back in Egypt. During this scene, which is about halfway through the movie, the soundtrack goes into this like upbeat twinkly number, which I really, really liked.
Those murderers, they just know how to bring in those jams.
That Freedom Orchestra.
So next scene is...
Stay with us, guys.
Next scene is in a house where someone is walking down a spiral staircase to an open room. I'm going to call it the ritual room, with a green circle and the words Chaos, Babylon, Lilith, Lucifer, Nut, Hadit, Ramorkvit, written in blood. I mean, red. Hopefully I didn't just like chant something and bring something into my apartment by saying that.
You didn't say it right, though. It's got to be like chaos, Bible. You gotta really get into it.
There's a guy walking around the circle with incense and a guy in a white, furry, feathery cloak in the middle of the circle, and it looks like he's saying or chanting something.
I was confused on who that character was supposed to be. The first time I watched it, I thought it was like trying to mimic Crowley, but then I keep watching. I'm like, is he just a part of the ritual? Is he just...
Allegedly, Kenneth Anger being being like a student of Crowley, he did actual rituals and filmed them for this movie.
Okay. Which I would believe it, because just reading on some of the stuff of him, like, younger before this movie is being made, like, going out and doing rituals with people or by himself, and, like, he was truly into this.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
A true believer, did many rituals. So I don't doubt it at all that when they filmed this, they were real rituals. After
this like circle chanting scene, there's another scene with an elephant foot squashing a snake.
Which I did not understand.
Which I was like, okay.
I still don't understand where that fit in, besides the snake maybe representing, like, Lucifer turning into the snake and getting Eve to eat the apple, or I don't know enough about Egyptian mythology to, like, that there's something with an elephant and a snake.
I feel like the elephant would go, I don't know, I feel like that would go more toward Indian mythology, and I don't know as much about that than I do of Egyptian mythology.
After the elephant squashes the snake, we're back in the ritual room where a person is walking around the circle and it's speeding up, and then all of a sudden there's like, the music is like, like now we're shredding the guitar. There's like a sparkly background and a triangle image of the ritual room. There's more lava, there's lightning, and then we see the back of a guy wearing like this sick like satin jacket. And in like a Technicolor extravaganza on the back, it has the word Lucifer.
I want that jacket.
Oh,
yeah, me too.
You can buy that jacket. You could actually go buy that jacket for like $200.
I want
That's worth it. That's worth it.
Yeah. It's like Grease. It's like this guy's in a jacket, his hands in his pocket, and he turns around. And here we are introduced to fucking Lucifer, right? Like, this is like, Lucifer is here. Woo! Clap, applause.
Time to party.
Then there's like this really cool pan shot through a bunch of rooms where people are quickly shuffling cards. And then we see the first dude. He unveils an image of Aleister Crowley. It's like in this like cool frame with like black feathers, like in a circle. In the same room, the guy pulls a book and we see an image of a goat person holding a goat, but it's definitely in a sexual manner. And we see the following phrase: of all the remaining monuments of antiquity, there is not any superior to this. It is in the possession of the King of Naples. The subject requires no explanation. Which I was like, perfect. This subject requires no explanation.
Awesome.
That picture of the goat with the person, I'm pretty sure was done by Aleister Crowley and painted at his house in Italy, the Abbey of Thelema.
Oh.
Which Anger lived in for a little while. Because that house had tons of murals, and a lot of them were sexual, a lot of it some bestiality and some demon stuff, so yeah. Little tidbit.
Good old fun.
Yeah.
Well, I was, reading about the Aeon of Horus being the age of Aquarius, and, there's a lot of water stuff. Like, Aquarius means water holder. It goes with, like, the whole cosmic egg and, like, the waters of, like, birth. And I don't remember where I read this, but I know that, like, the lava and, like, the bubbling stuff that you see in the beginning, that's supposed to be like the chaos and like the primordial like stuff that creation is made from. You know, like in the 60s, there was a lot of musical pop culture references to the age of Aquarius and everything. That was like all at the forefront. I was reading about like all of this like water stuff, and then it just turned into pop culture now and people that have a symbolism in their stuff now. And I was like, oh my God, like the music industry, it just like continues that like cultish thing. It's just like not in the forefront of everybody's mind. And in this article that I was reading, they point out a lot of musicians. Let's see, like Lady Gaga comes out. She came out in an egg at the 2011 Grammys. Let's see, what else was there? Kanye West has a video for the song Power. He's wearing a Horus the Child necklace. And
Nice.
A lot of Aquarian symbolism. There's lots of like water stuff in there. It looks like the Zodiac Aquarius. It's like personified in there. And then going along Crowley's like laws of, you know, do what thou wilt. Kesha has We Are Who We Are. So there's a lot of like, you know, be your own person. And yeah, there was just like a lot of pop culture stuff now that has a lot of this symbolism and like these messages in there. I'm like, wow, did this stuff ever actually really die down? Or did it just like kind of go underground and they're just putting it out there for the people who are going to pick it up?
I'm a firm believer that Disney's not as big as a company they are without using some type of chaos magic. Their CEO board meetings are ritual. I mean, look at even like the government, the Bloomberg meeting. They do some ritualistic shit there. Sure, it's a giant party, or, you know, you can get into the conspiracy of everything, but in the beginning of it, they do ritualistic things. I mean, there's a giant owl creature, the statue, that there's so much in the hierarchy of society when it comes to like this occult and
I know,
rituals.
It's
so
crazy. Interesting. And I really like seeing somebody like Crowley like lay it out and like, this is kind of like the guideline, and just like seeing it pop up everywhere. And it turns into like not being coincidences anymore. It's like these are connected somehow. And it's like you just have to follow those little threads, and it's very mind-bending.
That's the crazy thing with the human brain, because we're always looking for connections. So these things cannot be connected at all, but we're just connecting
That's
them.
also true.
And that comes to, it's like, is this real? Is this fake? What is reality at this point?
Damn you, Kenneth Anger.
Damn you. All right, let's get back to the movie. Because we're going to get into another hole very soon.
I know, we're almost, 29-minute movie, y'all. Jimmy Page makes a cameo in this room where the guy grabbed the book, and he's holding the Steel of Revelation, which looks like the 10 Commandments, but it also looks like a gravestone where it's like has images on it. Then Lucifer comes back and he's showing off a few different like body paint looks. He's like covered in red. He's covered in like black and white stripes. He gets a birthday cake from the first guy that we meet. He holds a cat figure. And then it cuts back to Lilith, who's in a business casual look, holding a scarf, chanting something. Glass breaks. Lilith is confused. She starts yelling. She drops the scarf, cries into the scarf, and causes a farmhouse thunderstorm.
So this is what confused me when I first watched it. When I went into this, I had some knowledge. And Isis is known to cry and cause the river to flood, flooding everything. So I was thinking when I first watched this that this is like different stages of of Isis and Osiris, and like it's just the same person just reincarnated over and over again, right? That's what I thought when the first time I watched it, because I know a little bit about Lilith, but I've never heard anything about Lilith crying and drowning the world. The tears of Isis, you know? Isis does two things that also made me think this, you know, the crying and reincarnation. She brings back Osiris from the dead.
Right.
I was thinking maybe they're just bringing each other back. they summoned Lucifer to help. I got confused the first time I watched this about this scene. If anyone want to try to clear that up for me.
Maybe Kenneth was using artistic liberty to use the idea of the Tears of Isis, but have Lilith do it. Because, yeah, it's definitely clear that she's crying and causing this, like, thunderstorm that we see, like, a cow in a farmhouse and chaos kind of happening.
Which, yeah, it just, I guess so. It's just that was the one part that I was, like, taken back by. I was like, oh, I guess I was kind of wrong what I was going with. But I guess it makes all sense in the end.
Yeah.
As much as it could be about this movie.
There is no explanation.
No.
So after the farmhouse thunderstorm, we cut back to Egypt. The gray lady comes back. She finds like a friend who's looking at a ruin. And then she like fondles a flower. Osiris and Isis are back. They're strolling through Egypt. Osiris has some figurines that he's like, look at my figurines. And he's like colored in green now. He drops the figurines into some water. And then there's like this negative exposure scene where you see like a bunch of people that look naked and they're dancing. And there's this large being who has these arms out. And this large being is holding some of these people and like has like 5 in each hand and is raising them into the air. That was really cool. I had no idea how they did that, but that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After that, rocks explode out of the ground. Isis and Osiris summon a red UFO over Egypt. There's lots of flashing imagery and then a 1-minute fade out shot of 2 Egyptian sculptures, which I was like, is that Isis and Osiris? And then it cuts to like this sick cloud UFO Egyptian person snake painting and scene. The end.
So, the UFO.
Yes. The UFO, which turns into like 4 UFOs.
It is rumored, if through alien people that like aliens, that in 1904, when Aleister Crowley was in Egypt and he wrote the Book of Law, what he interacted with was a gray alien.
Ooh.
And that
All
the
right.
rest of his life, he had interactions with UFOs and aliens. So I'm guessing this is why he put the UFO in there. That's my only link to the UFO. And, you know, obviously the
Okay.
Egyptians having believed that we believe that the Egyptians may have had contact with UFOs.
It's how the pyramids were built.
Yeah.
I mean, Stonehenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was also in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, that's a magical site.
Crowley and his followers said there's a strong belief with UFOs and meeting beings, and also chaos magic goes back to alien beings, and magic in general goes back to alien beings. That's how it started. But that's a whole different timeline and thread we can't go down.
Yeah, that's, oh my goodness. Yeah, it's just spider webs.
Yes, constantly.
So on IMDb, when you look up Lucifer Rising 1972, in their trivia section, somebody wrote that the flying saucer that appears in the film was included after an incident where a UFO flew over the production crew but disappeared before the cameras captured the object.
Once again, magic follows anger. Kenneth is just an object of pure magic, which, if we read on any of this kind of things, that's what the aliens are looking into. And if it did go over, they are just trying to see what's happening with anger. There's too many holes to go down. But look up Aleister Crowley and the Black Lodge and that stuff, and just,
You know, I've been listening to podcasts about different occult stuff and like alien things, and not going to discount that idea because
once you start diving into aliens, they show up fucking everywhere.
They do.
God damn it, everywhere. And even lizard people fucking show up everywhere. Which I don't necessarily believe in that. but aliens are fucking everywhere. And it's just so kind of creepy.
It is.
So we're going to rate this on Emerald Wands. 1 out of 5. Emerald Wands. Patrick.
All right. First time I watched this movie, I was not that impressed. Reading on it, doing some research, and watching it 2 more times, I really enjoyed this short film. I really like it. It lingers with you. And especially when you start researching and you find out more about Kenneth Anger, it just stays with you. I want to give this 4.5 Emerald Wands.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
I really liked it. It's a quick watch. The music's great. It's deep. You find little thing every time you watch it, you find something new, and you do some research. You go down this rabbit hole, which I love learning about this kind of shit. So, yeah.
Cool. Holly?
All right. I've been struggling with this rating for a couple days. Because, yeah, the first time I watched it, I definitely wished I was higher than I was. And next couple times, I had done some reading up on it, and I was, piecing together all of those allusions and everything, and I had a lot of fun deciphering everything and going back to my occult history and everything, because at one point in my life I had tried to get a degree in the occult.
Ooh.
So like all of this knowledge was floating somewhere in the back of my head, and I pulled out one of my books and I started like, oh yeah, like I remember this, and how universal a lot of these themes and images are, and I had a lot of fun with that. I'm going to sort of rate this more as the experience I had with it, rather than, because just watching the movie, it's like, okay, I just watched a bunch of images and I don't know what to make of them. I don't know what to do with these. Luckily, I had a basis in this mythology, so I kind of knew what was going on, and it just took a little bit of effort to piece it together. Okay, it's one thing to do research to enhance what you have watched. It's another thing to do research to understand what you watched. Like when it's so obscure that you need to put in some extra, you can't just sit and think about it and reflect and come up with your own things. You have to actually go out and do research. That's a little excessive to me. So that was not annoying. It made me concerned for, like I said before, the people who are watching this 40 years ago, if you were able to see it then, what were you able to get from this? What could you, if you didn't have this knowledge, did this do anything for you? And if it didn't, that it's kind of unfortunate, because I did, ultimately, overall, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the journey of doing all this research and everything, but it just kind of made me a little sad for, people who see this and don't have that access. But overall, with my experience, I'm going to give it a 3.5. It was so super 70s that I was totally jiving with that. And I love the music. So yeah, overall, my experience with it was pretty awesome.
Right on.
Hell yeah.
I'm also going to give it a 3.5 magical emerald wands. How do you even begin to describe this movie?
Yeah. That's why I didn't take notes.
Yeah, I have 8 tabs open right now.
Yeah.
The first time I watched it, I was like, what the heck is going on? And I lost track halfway through. It's a 29-minute short. Okay. Then I read up on it, and then I watched it again, and I still was like, what? And then I watched it a third time, all the way through, phone down, no distractions, having a better understanding of what the heck it was about. I get it. I felt like I really understood what was happening. I love the, like Holly, like you said, the experience that you get from it. I love the way deep into your like subconscious, deep reflection that you go into it when you start, you look into it and then you start researching and then you start rethinking your life and your values and everything and art and perception and what is life, So 3.5 magical emerald wands. You can find Lucifer Rising on YouTube. You just need to Google Lucifer Rising YouTube 1972. There's a high-def version. Look up Kenneth Anger. Just read all of his interesting stories. There's a variety of interviews. We're going to include a variety of links and the resources. Thank you so much for listening. If you made it this far,
yeah,
man.
Yes, thank you.
Don't forget to check us out on Instagram, horrormelee.com. That's HORRORMELEE.com. And holler at us. Tell us your thoughts. Send us all the conspiracy theorists. Let us know tell us if you've encountered aliens or if you feel things about Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, or if you want to talk to me about mythology.
Oh, yeah.
Convince Holly to get a major in occult.
I'll get back to it, I promise.
All right, I'm going to give a little poem from Aleister Crowley. Stab your demonic smile to my brain. Soak me in cognac, cunt, and cocaine. Sprawl on me. Sit on my mouth, Leah. Shit.